Are you guilty of doing these 5 newbie fish keeping mistakes? Today we're going to be covering 5 newbie mistakes that you should avoid if you want to keep fish like a pro and make sure that they have the best life. But before then, don't subscribe yet because I'm going to earn your subscription by the end of this video with all the information. Now, I don't want to be one of those elitist fish keepers that just goes on and on and on about the nitrogen cycle, but it would not be one of these videos if we didn't bring it up time and time and time again. I get messages on Facebook, I get messages on Discord, I get messages, Nate, all my fish have died overnight, what could have possibly happened? I'll tell you what happened. You set the tank up, you went to your pet store, and then you threw the fish in, you fed them some of their food, and they were beautiful, they were swimming, they were super happy, and you went to bed feeling like a super good fish keeper, right? Then you woke up and what did you find? All the fish were dead. The reason is you skipped the nitrogen cycle. The reason why your aquarium needs a nitrogen cycle is because when you feed your fish or your fish poop or your plants decay or things slowly age in the tank over time, ammonia is going to be introduced to your aquarium. Now, ammonia in very tiny doses is not necessarily a concern. However, when it starts to creep up in the tank, which is a closed environment, we're not actively bringing water in or removing water unless we're doing water changes, which we can't water change 100% of the water all the time. The ammonia is going to creep up and it is going to start making your fish sick. They are going to get ammonia burn. They're going to be breathing less efficiently. Their internal organs will start shutting down. So you want to make sure that when you set up your aquarium, you do a nitrogen cycle. I'm not going to go through it here. There are many awesome videos on YouTube. I'll link one in the description for cycling your tank. There's many great products that you can use, such as Fritz Zyme 7. I've used that in my own tanks, Fritz Turbo Start, all that amazing stuff. Do not skip your nitrogen cycle. Trust me, I know that you want to just get into fish keeping. I know that it can be a long wait and it can be tempting, but the risk is just not worth the reward. It's just not. Do the nitrogen cycle, save your fish. And that's going to bring us to mistake number 2, which is going to be overstocking too fast. Now, I'm going to preface here and say that when I say overstocking, I don't necessarily mean putting too many fish in one aquarium. You actually can do this so long as you have enough filtration, you feed properly, you have the right, balance in the tank. Overstocking can be achieved, and it's pretty frequently done in big African cichlid tanks, rainbow fish tanks, nano fish aquariums, stuff like that. It's pretty often that they'll overstock the tank for lots of different colors and variation. What I mean is, don't go and get yourself 1, 2, 3, 4 fish tanks and then fill every single tank with fish, because there's actually a hidden cost when it comes to running multiple tanks or multiple different species. Multiple different tanks means multiple different heaters, multiple different filters, multiple different tanks to feed. There's a lot that goes into it. And then you've got to think about the plants. Are you just going to have a empty tank with no plants in it, no rocks, no hardscape, driftwood? That might work if you're going to breed fish, but if you want the fish to actually have a good life and display the best colors, have the enrichment that they need to be really beautiful fish in your aquarium, you're going to need to give them substrate, hardscape, plants, good water conditions. There's a lot of things you're going to have to take into consideration. So when you start overstocking yourself or running yourself thin with multiple tanks, multiple fish, it's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's just, you're going to run yourself thin, and then one of your tanks may end up crashing, and then what was it all for, right? So my advice is start off small. It doesn't have to be a small tank. I just mean start off with one project, perfect that project, make sure that it's running flawlessly, and then move on to your next project so that there's not as much of an upkeep maintaining your first one, right? You're not trying to finish the first one before you've even started the second. That's what I think that you should do. Make sure that you're comfortable, do it at a good pace. You don't want to find yourself with 1.5 million empty tanks and very boring upset fish. And now we're going to move into one that's a little bit controversial. This one is going to be quarantining your fish. Now, it's worth noting that depending on how you're getting the fish, they may not need to be quarantined. I say this because if, for example, in my own fish room, I'm moving one fish that I know is safe and has been safe for a long time, I don't need to quarantine that fish if I'm moving it to another tank. I know that that fish is safe. It's been within my own fish room. When I do need to quarantine fish is when I'm bringing fish externally, fish from outside of my own fish room or my own tanks. I need to quarantine them and the plants as well. The reason is they may actually have diseases, pathogens, pests, parasites. The list goes on, and it's not to say that whoever you got them from isn't reputable. It just happens. That's just how fish keeping works. Sometimes there's just invisible invaders in the fish, and the pet stores or breeders or wholesalers, they don't notice it. It's not to say that they don't look, they just don't notice it. So always make sure that that you quarantine everything that you get, snails as well, shrimp, everything gets quarantined, because in this day and age, in 2026, unfortunately, there is a lot of breeders. You don't know the quality, you don't know the parameters, you just don't know. It's better to quarantine and lose one fish that was sick than to put it in your beautiful display tank and lose everything. For example, I want to put a bunch of Corydoras here in my Bosmani tank, but I'm not going to go out and buy a bunch of Corydoras and just throw them straight in here, because even if the Corydoras aren't sick, that doesn't mean that they might have something my Bosmanis are more susceptible to. You don't even really need to have a big quarantine tank or quarantine setup. Most people aren't getting a million fish in at once like a fish shop, so you can get away with having a little 20-gallon setup with, you know, a sponge filter, a heater, and put your new fish or plants in there to the temperature it requires. Watch it over a couple of weeks, and if they don't show any negative symptoms, they're probably fine to be put in your main tank. This small step can really save fish lives, and it can save you as a fish keeper a lot of heartbreak. Everybody wants that instant gratification of having awesome fish in their tank, but it's really sad when they die. So yeah, just please quarantine your fish, quarantine your plants. Don't risk it. It's not worth it. So picture this, you walk into an aquarium and you go over to where all the tanks are, and there it is. You see the most beautiful fish you've ever seen in your life. It's nice and silver, it's got beautiful fins, it's small, it's got a nice stripe down its face, and you're like, wow, this fish is beautiful. I can't wait to get it home to my 20-gallon and watch it grow. So you go and ask the store clerk, how much is that fish? And he tells you it's on sale actually, it's $12 for that fish. And you think, wow, that's just an amazing deal. I need that fish. So you grab it, you get it home, and you put it in your tank. Awesome, right? What a steal. Dream fish for 12 bucks. Come 3 months later and that fish is now the size of your 20-gallon tank. You unknowingly just purchased a fingerling barramundi and they can grow to over 100 centimeters. This unfortunately happens to all of us at one point in our fish keeping career. It is impulse buying, or buying without actually researching what it is that we are getting. Whenever you're going into a fish store to get new fish, you should always have an understanding of what it is that you want. It's okay to be impulsive when it comes to food or, you know, different plants, stuff like that. But when it comes to the actual fish, never be impulsive, because that small, tiny little fish that they're selling you is actually probably only a few months old, and it could probably grow to well over a foot long. And a lot of us just don't have a tank that can suit a fish that size. If you do, then I guess it's a big win, right? But for most fish keepers, it's just not practical to go in and buy a small fish like a clown loach or a bola shark or something like that and then put it in a tiny little aquarium. You don't know any better, so it's not necessarily your fault, but you should have done some more research, because the pet store clerks, they're not here to really help you out most of the time. They've got KPIs and KRAs that they need to hit. That's a job. They need to make money, right, for the business. So just please make sure you research the fish. Do not impulse buy. And that's going to bring us to our fifth and final mistake, which is one that we've all been guilty of at one stage in our fish keeping journey, and that's going to be overfeeding our fish. I know how it is. Sometimes they're just, you know, so cute and they just come to the front of the tank screaming for food, so we just, you know, put some food in there. But this is one of the worst things you can do in two different ways. The first way is the food might go uneaten. The fish might eat some of it and the rest just falls down underneath some hardscape, rocks, the substrate, and that uneaten food, it's actually going to break down into ammonia, which we really don't want. In our tank, water doesn't change like it does in the wild. So if ammonia starts building up in our tank, it's going to crash our cycle. It's going to harm our fish, both internally, their gills, just everything. So don't feed them so much food that they don't eat it and it just sits around on the ground. And if you do feed them too much, make sure to siphon or remove the excess food before it starts to break down in your tank. The second way is that you feed so much food and the fish actually eat it. They have eyes much bigger than their stomach, unfortunately, and they don't really know how much they can eat. They just think they can. And so what happens is when you feed them a lot of food, especially high protein food, they'll just munch on all of it despite not really being able to fit it all in their stomachs. And it's one of the leading causes for dropsy and bloat in your fish. It can lead to obstructions in their bowel, trouble with bowel movement, stuff like that. So if you feed them so much food that they just are always bloated, it's not really a good thing. It's not good for their health. There is such a thing as loving them too much. My tip to make sure that you're always feeding the right amount for your fish is just to feed them sparingly, a little bit at a time. They should come and start eating the food, and once they've finished with the amount that you give them, feed them a little bit more. Keep doing this until they just aren't interested or seemingly are less interested, and that's when you can say you fed them. By doing this, it's also a really good way to get shy fish to be used to you. There's a lot of small fish like tetras, danios, pseudomugals, or blue eyes. There's a lot of small fish that are by nature more shy, and they might not want to come and eat the food when you're standing there watching them. If you feed them a little bit of food and take a step back, they should come to the front and eat the food that you just put in, and then you just rinse and repeat the process. And this will actually build a bit of a bond between you and your fish, which will also make them less shy, which this is just an awesome byproduct of feeding them the right amount of food. So that's going to do it, fish freaks, for this video. That's 5 newbie mistakes that you can stop making, and if you are making them, it's not such a big deal. There's ways to fix it. Are you guilty of any of these? Let me know in the comments, and as always, like the video and splash the subscribe button to become a fish freak, because we'd love to have you here.